All right, it's Monday, June 17th. This is an end of the day, first day of the week SPY recap. And today on the daily chart, we have a nice green breakout above the 3-day range. We held above the midpoint of the prior day. In a moment, I'll show you price started up from the start between the blue line pre-market range and then followed through for most of the session to the upside. So if we look at today's price action, we knew coming into the day we had kind of a 3-day overlapping range after the gap up. Opening price kind of paused for a couple of bars here and then moved up on bar 3 with a green bar. There's your buy signal, kind of expecting that pre-market high to be taken out. Once we got up there, we had a little bit of a pause, always an inflection point, but then immediately continued up for a nice strong day all day long. So again, upside was the opening price action, and it ended up with a nice directional day. Again, not surprising given that you're breaking out of a 3-day range. Once things get going, you might end up with a day like this to the upside. From last week on the weekly chart, after that big green bar, you're expecting that weekly high to be taken out. So that was accomplished on day one. Now we have the reference point of the open of the week here, which is the open of today. As long as we kind of stay above there, the continuity's continued momentum to the upside. If we want to fail, we know that has to turn red by getting below there back into that weekly range. And it is possible we get a turnaround Tuesday to the downside. There's no doubt about it, but we kind of have to what? We have to get below the midpoint of today, this big green bar. So if we open up down a little bit and don't quite get below the midpoint, then you kind of expect the continuation to the upside. If we maybe take out the high of the previous day, but then have a strong pullback, gets through the midpoint of that bar, that's probably the first sign you're going to turn the weekly chart red. You're going to then test the bottom of this range, and maybe we get a weekly, if with a few days to go in the, a long time to go in the week, maybe we get down to the halfway point of the prior week and get all the way to those lows if things really get negative. Again, you're not expecting that because the continuity is to the upside. I mean, the monthly chart's still green and heading up, and that has, some time to go, but that's likely not going to turn red this month anyway. We might get a weekly reversal or a pause before the end of the month. You never know, but at least for now, that's up, and we have the reference point where it turns red. And of course, the daily chart, after pausing for 3 days, definitely has built up enough energy to continue higher. So as long as we stay above the midpoint of this day, and head higher, we stick with that continuity. We see where upward price action takes us. Today, obviously, if you're going to trade the indexes, it worked out very well. Other stocks, if I go around the board, I mean, I happen to trade, if you look at the different stocks I follow, Tesla was the only one that really right from the start worked high above its pre-market range and continued. Most stocks ended up higher, but Tesla was the strongest of them all that I was looking at. Like Nvidia here started down to start the session. Even Meta started down before pausing and heading higher. Coinbase headed down before turning around to the upside. Netflix, which was not as bad as the others, at least paused for 3 bars before it broke out to the upside. But Tesla was the strongest right out of the gate, so I happened to pick that one, and that's what I often do when I'm watching many stocks at the same time. But anyway, SPY is clearly, continuing the uptrend at the moment. We know the reference points for failures. It's still early in the week, so there is plenty of time to fail, so keep that in mind. This breakout doesn't have to hold, but at least if it wants to hold, we know, some of the key levels that it can't go below in order to continue up. And if it doesn't have a turnaround Tuesday to the downside and we have another strong day, then it almost seems likely that the rest of the week will, stay strong. But that's not always the case either. But, it's just something to keep in mind. A lot of times you get those turnarounds and failures early in the week. In other words, we took out the weekly high here early. That was expected, the green bar. And then at some point it wants to fail and come back through there to the downside. But since we have an overall strong uptrend in play, there's no real, expectation of that, but it's something to consider, that it's early in the week that we took out that prior weekly high. So let's see how things go for the rest of the week. We know the reference points, and today a good day to the upside.